For decades, it was a shadow war, a conflict fought with proxies and covert ops. But in June of 2025, that all changed. Suddenly, Iran and Israel were in a direct, open conflict, and it pulled in the United States, putting the entire Middle East on a knife's edge. Now, there's a fragile ceasefire, but the whole world is basically holding its breath. So let's break down how we got here and what could possibly happen next.
And that's not just me being dramatic. One of our sources framed the stakes in exactly those terms. This is way more than just a regional spat. The fallout from this conflict, it has the potential to reshape global alliances, economics, and really the very nature of how we think about international security.
So, to really get a grip on where all this might be heading, and to understand the fears of an even bigger war down the line, we first need to rewind the clock a little. We have to get a crystal clear picture of what just went down. Let's dig into the conflict of June 2025. The direct military fight itself lasted just 12 days, from June 13th to June 24th. But you can bet its impact is going to be felt for years to come. So, what were the key moments? Okay, so here's how it kicked off. It began with Israel launching a series of strikes that targeted Iran's nuclear program and missile facilities. Iran's response was, well, massive. A huge barrage of missiles and drones aimed right at Israel. The United States then jumped into the fray with its own strikes, which led to Iran firing on a U.S. base in Qatar. Finally, a ceasefire was called, and it brought the open fighting to a halt.
Now, let's talk about the human cost. According to a research briefing from the UK Parliament, it was pretty significant, especially for Iran. They reported over 1,000 casualties, and that number included many senior political and military leaders. Israel, on the other hand, reported 29 deaths, while the U.S. reported 0 casualties from its actions.
And this brings us to the million-dollar question, right? The whole point of the initial strikes was Iran's nuclear program. So how much damage was actually done? Well, as it turns out, the answer is pretty complicated. Right after it happened, trying to get a clear picture was tough. The fog of war is a very real thing, and it led to all these conflicting reports and assessments, sometimes even from inside the same government. Just to give you an idea of the confusion, check this out. Early U.S. intelligence assessments were saying Iran's program was only set back by a few months. But then, the CIA director came out and publicly said the facilities were severely damaged and would take years to rebuild. I mean, those are two very different pictures of the same event. A much more nuanced take came from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. They confirmed, yeah, there was very significant damage. But, and this is a huge but, they pointed out that Iran still has the scientists, the know-how, and the industrial base to rebuild. It's a powerful reminder. You can destroy buildings, but you can't really destroy knowledge. But this conflict was about more than just the nuclear question. It gave us a stunning look at what modern warfare is. The sheer scale of Iran's retaliation was just unprecedented. A report from JINSA tallied it up: 574 ballistic missiles launched at Israel in just 12 days. And if that's one side of the coin, the other side is the incredible power of modern defense. That same report notes that the combined U.S. and Israeli air defenses managed to intercept 273 of those missiles. That is a remarkable feat of technology and coordination. In a picture like this, it captures just one small moment in what was basically the first modern long-range missile war between two countries that don't even share a border. It was a real-time test of the limits of both offense and defense. All right, so let's zoom out a bit. Beyond the actual battlefield, how did this 12-day war really shake up the strategic landscape of the Middle East? Because the ripple effects have been pretty profound. To really get what shifted, we have to first talk about Iran's go-to foreign policy tool, something they call the axis of resistance. This is basically their network of allies and proxy groups, think Hezbollah, Hamas, that Iran has built up for decades to project its influence and create a kind of forward defense. And here's the thing. According to that UK Parliament briefing, that whole axis has been seriously weakened. Military actions in the years before had already worn down Hamas and Hezbollah. A key ally, President Assad, was gone from Syria. And, most telling, when the direct conflict erupted in June, most of these allied groups just stayed on the sidelines. But, and this is important, The same source makes it really clear this isn't a one-sided story. Israel is facing its own major challenges. It's having a hard time deepening ties with Arab Gulf nations, partly because there's been no real progress on a two-state solution for the Palestinians. And at the same time, you've got other big players, like Turkey, expanding their influence in the region.
Okay, so that brings us right back to today. The ceasefire is holding, for now, but tensions are absolutely simmering. So what are the immediate risks that could plunge the whole region right back into open war? Well, that UK briefing lays out 4 major flashpoints we need to be watching. First, both sides have said, very publicly, that they will respond forcefully to any ceasefire violations. Second, nuclear talks are totally stalled. Third, there's the threat of what are called snapback sanctions. And fourth, Western nations are warning about an increase in hostile Iranian activity on their own home turf.
Out of all of those, the most urgent one is probably that sanctions deadline. See, under the 2015 nuclear deal, European powers have until October 2025 to trigger a snapback that would put all UN sanctions back on Iran. Some are even pushing for an August deadline. It's basically a ticking clock, and Iran is warned that if they use it, it could escalate things irreversibly. And all of this, it just brings us to one final, really unsettling question. The war in June 2025 proved one thing for sure. The decades-long shadow war is over. But what comes next? Is this fragile peace the end of the story? Or is it just a pause before a conflict that could swallow up not just the region, but maybe the entire world?